Are you maybe 5 to 10 years out from retirement and you're thinking, what do I even think about? What kind of goals do I need to set? In this episode, we go through all the different things you need to think through when it comes to retirement planning goals.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from Secure Your Retirement. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you receive alerts when they come out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Secure Your Retirement Podcast. Today is talking about goals. So now when we say this, we're going to give you a lot of different things to think about from the perspective of a person that's, let's say, within about 10 years of retirement or already in retirement. And as Merce and I talk this through, what we really want to do is kind of give you different things that we run into all the time that people are thinking about. And I think if you are in a position where anywhere, if you're planning for retirement or you're already in retirement, sometimes it's good, especially if you're going to sit down and have a conversation with your financial advisor to say, hey, here's some things I want to make sure that we consider. And so if you're listening to this, I want you to know that, you can make this list if you want, but we've also done the work for you. So we do have a blog written on this. We've got the show notes. So you'll have all this in writing just to go back and say, man, here's some goals that I want to make sure that I think through so that you're prepared when you do sit down for a financial planning meeting. And we're going to hit quite a few different areas and just talk through things. And this is really kind of to be that way to tease your brain to go, oh, man, that is a good one to think about. Now, you think as you hear this, Merce and I have been doing this for a number of years of working with financial planning retirees, pre-retirees. So this is all built off experience. This is things we hear very commonly all the time. So Merce, if you don't mind, could you kind of start off and let's just think about this whole idea of retirement and some of the goals that somebody might have around that topic?
Yeah, retirement I think is a big concept and can be overwhelming. So having goals in place, thinking through what it takes to retire properly, that's going to be huge. So, one that comes to mind is, do you need help or have you thought through what it looks like to retire? So this is really speaking to, do you have a plan in place as far as the plan answering the questions of when can I retire? Is it financially possible for me to retire at this specific age? And then everything that comes after that, we could go for days on all the things we need to think about, but the easy ones are Social Security, Medicare, the investment strategy, the estate plan. So are all of those things in place as we decide when to retire?
Hey, not to cut you off there, and I'll let you come back, but it just made me think. I just had a conversation this morning, and here's kind of how that conversation went. He's 59, about to turn 60, wife's 60, and he likes his job, but he says, I said, what's your goal for retirement? And he said, I'm thinking about like 5 years. He goes, but really, if I could dream it up, he goes, I want to know that I could retire in 3 years. Meaning, we talked about this concept that if he knew that he could retire in three, it doesn't mean he's going to retire in three, but he goes, man, that would make going to work a lot better if I just knew I could. So he's now thinking about it 5 years in advance from when he really wants to retire, but kind of saying, what would it look like if I did it in three? And I said, what about your wife? And he goes, she wants to retire in two. So he's planning ahead. And I think that's what you're saying here, Merce, is that
Hmm.
we're kind of looking at this and what's the power of that? And doing that in advance, all of a sudden going to work now is fun because you go, I'm going to work because I want to go to work.
Right. And it's all possible by kind of thinking through it way ahead of time and having that plan in place that lets you play with, well, is it 1 or 2 years from now? Is it 5 years from now? Which leads into the next one is, do we have goals of retiring early? And if we do, have we thought that through? Because it's not just, do I have enough money to retire early we're seeing people retire at 60 and 62 quite often, but understanding that, well, Social Security doesn't turn on till 62. So how are we going to bridge that income gap? We don't qualify for Medicare till 65. So health insurance, quite honestly, health insurance is a big reason why people don't retire early, is because they don't want to deal with that added cost of getting private health insurance. So a lot of things to think through there when it comes to retiring early, and it all comes back to having a good plan in place. Another one is maybe some people don't want to fully retire and they like their job or they have passion projects and they say, hey, What if at 60 I retire from my career, but then from 60 to 65 I work part-time, or I've got good relationships and I want to consult just to bring in some additional cash flow before I start tapping into my own assets. That's a big one. That's a big goal of a lot of people, is to steadily start slowing down so it's not just a straight stop from working. Um, and then, from a goals perspective, how confident do you feel about the retirement plan, or do you even have a plan in place, and how confident do you feel in it when it comes to that? And then the next one would be understanding your retirement income sources. I think when you understand your retirement income and the assets that are going to drive that income, that's going to start building the confidence. So do we have the right pieces of the puzzle in place when it comes to the investment accounts, when it comes to understanding your Social Security and your pension and your fixed income sources and what's going to generate that for you, is all going to build that confidence to help make that decision to retire. And then another big one, which is common, some people say, "Hey, I've lived up north all my life, and I want to retire in Florida." Well, have you thought through what a change of residency would look like? And is that truly a goal of yours, or is it kind of a pipe dream that just sounds nice and you would never actually pull the trigger on? So getting serious about some of these things that we have mentioned is all going to kind of lead towards what retirement's going to look like for you, and then also build that confidence in it.
Very good. Well, let's move on to family goals. And there's only a couple here that I just wanted to point out that I thought that we've run into. One of those is, do you have something coming up that's one of those big events in life that you go, I really want to make sure we're covered on this. We've had a client here recently who they have twins and a son. So they got twin girls and a son, and the son is getting married, and then the twins, one of them is seriously dating. So they're like, we've got 3 weddings that in the next 5 to 10 years that we need to kind of think through. And so we were kind of like really laying things out well in advance of that. And I know now the real life of that. My son is at the point where he's kind of contemplating this idea of getting married. And all of a sudden now you're kind of going, okay, how are we going to lay this out? What's it going to look like? What do I want to do? And that takes a thought process based on maybe your belief system, but it's also the amount of money. And then another one here, I think is kind of an interesting one. And I think we're going to talk about this one more time, but within family goals, we had a client had this big bucket list thing that they wanted to take all the family. And this included, I believe they have 3 children. So 3 children and their spouses, and then probably around 8 or so grandchildren. And they all wanted to go on a cruise together. And the grandparents, our clients, wanted to pay for the whole thing. So they said, look, this is just something we want to do. We want to build this memory together. And so big event. And they talked to us probably a year and a half or so in advance saying, this is what we want. And we talked about where do we want to pull the money from. The other one that could come up that we need to think about in advance is, do I have a parent that is aging, or do I am myself in this situation? But in particularly, do I have a parent that maybe I might need to be a part of their care? And how do I want to be a part of their care? I know for me, my mom is in an assisted living, and our plan for how we deal with that, myself and my 2 siblings, is, it's a lot of thought process. And I know our clients, when they enter that scenario too, we got to think through what are we going to do? What's going to be needed from us? And that could just be time away from work. That could be time away from other goals. Just thinking that through. So Merce, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe the professional self-development goals, or if you got anything else on those?
Yeah, so in the self-development and professional goals category, not a ton here, but there's one here that talks about financial independence and financial health. I would restructure that goal to kind of saying, hey, as we approach retirement, I think it is important to get more financially involved in your situation. So a lot of times we do see maybe one spouse is more involved on the financial side than the other. And taking time to fully understand, well, what it is that we have created here from a wealth perspective of all these savings that we've done over the last 40 years. What does that amounted to? What types of buckets of money do we have from a tax classification? How does this financial plan that the advisor has made for us, how is this actually operating to where the advisor can say, hey, you're going to have a successful retirement? I think understanding all of that and taking the time to kind of learn and educate ourselves on what the plan is just I think puts a little bit more power back in your pocket and kind of builds that confidence as we approach retirement. So I think that would be a goal of some is, for a long time you were the expert in your own career, whatever that career was, but now we're transitioning into retirement. And I think having people do a lot of it for you is a good thing, but also kind of understanding what all of it truly means to you at the end of the day is going to be powerful. If you're still working and maybe there's certifications or education that you've been looking towards to kind of, put the icing on the cake for your career, those are things that could be worth exploring as well as we are on the back end of our career. If you've considered starting a business as your second career or your way to transition into retirement, be very careful about that. Starting a business is not easy and it's not always fruitful. So you really want to think that one through and do some proper business planning on that. But that's really all I've got for self-development and professional types of goals.
All right, let's talk a little bit about asset and debt goals. And I think the first thing that I want to talk about here is something that we've been dealing with a lot this year, and that is, do I want to reduce my risk of market volatility in our investments? And the reason why that's been such a big topic is we've had a couple good years where the things have grown. And so if you said originally, let's say your overall allocation was, I don't want to have more than, let's just say 60% of my money exposed to market risk. Well, right now, if you've done the math, you might have 70%, even 75% exposed because that market did so good. And so should I rebalance? And that's been a big topic that we're talking about this year, is to bring ourselves back into balance. So if you want to do that, say, hey, what's that conversation look like? I need to talk to my advisor about how that would look. The other might be is that I want to increase my returns. So you might have kind of gotten it easy here for a little bit, and you went, man, I got my CD that's paying 5%, or I got my bank that's paying 5%, and now all of a sudden rates have come down, and you're like, hey, I got a lot of cash in the bank. Do I really want to try to see what else could I do to get a little bit better rate of return? And then the other part of this could be, and this would go either way. You know what? They got more money coming in the door than what I really need, and I that's why my bank account is building up. So I might want to make an adjustment that way, and maybe reduce what I've got coming in the door and let it stay more in savings. And then the other scenario that is you know what? I've got some other goals I want to do this year. I want a little bit more income this year. Either one of those is okay. It just needs to be well thought out and planned when it comes to this aspect of things.
Okay, moving on to lifestyle goals, which I think is a big thing. Way too often in retirement planning types of meetings with clients or people that are interested in our services, when we talk about, what do you want when it comes to what do you want to get out of retirement? A lot of people don't have a good answer for that in the terms of, well, what am I going to do to keep me busy? What's going to continue to give me purpose? My career gave me purpose, and now I'm going to transition out of my career. So what's the next big thing that I'm going to tackle as I enter into this retirement phase? So lifestyle goals are going to be very important. Some of the simpler ones are going to be, are you planning to move? So are you going to move to get closer to the kids and grandkids, or are you trying to move to that retiree type of destination? And what's that going to look like for you, which could involve selling a house or selling a second home, and the implications of that. From a tax perspective, also from what are you going to buy if you do sell, and is it going to make financial sense to do that? And then lifestyle, sometimes people say, hey, I never drove nice cars. I want to get a nice car when I retire. So what does that look like? How does it fit into the plan? And the bigger one, I think, is vacations and hobbies, right? We sacrifice in our careers to save and then also take care of the family. And maybe we've got some bucket list vacations that we want to tackle, especially on the younger side of our retirement years, in the first 5 to 10 years of retirement. And then also the hobbies that we've been putting off. We have plenty of clients that have taken up woodworking or taken up golf, or now pickleball is a huge thing in our area. So what are some of those hobbies that we want to take up now that we'll have a little bit more time on our hands?
All right, let's move on to the thing that everybody loves to talk about, and that's taxes. So what's some tax planning goals? This is a great thing to think about, by the way, at the beginning of the year, because there's things I could start doing now that could really be impactful to my next year. There's not much I can do about 2024 at this point if I'm listening to this episode here. So whenever you're listening to this, if I'm in the beginning of the year, I can't do much about last year. but I can do something about this year. So what are some things that I could do? I mean, do I want to think about being charitably inclined? Is that something I should look at? We tell people all the time, even if you're not charitably inclined, I think we can convince you that you might want to be a little charitably inclined, because there is benefit to being charitably inclined when it comes to taxes if I do it right. The other thing to think about ahead of time is, if I have a business that I'm going to sell, or I have real estate that I'm going to sell, before I get a contract, I need to make sure that I'm talking to a tax specialist. And one of the things that we do, if a person's got significant gain on a piece of property, significant gain in a business, we have a tax specialist that we work along with, and we bring it to our clients to say, before you get, this is very important, before I get a sales contract, before I get that deal done, I need to do some things, because we can significantly change the impact that you would have on a sale like that of a major asset. So if you think that's coming up, you don't want to get that and go, hey, I just got a contract, and by the way, I got an extra, few $100,000 coming in. What do I do now? Well, there's things we could do, but we could be so much more impactful if we did it prior to the contract.
Okay,
Right.
so another favorite of people outside of tax planning is healthcare planning. And what does that look like as we approach retirement? A lot of us are on employer-sponsored type healthcare right now, and so you don't really think about it. You just comes out of your paycheck, and all of a sudden you have health insurance for you and the family. That changes when you approach retirement. And so the questions you got to start asking yourselves are, do I have any benefits that carry on with my employer? Or am I going to have to go find insurance if I retire early? And then at 65, how does Medicare work? Have I talked to a consultant? In our office, we have Sean, who is very, very knowledgeable around Medicare, and he helps people make those decisions because it's ever changing and it's quite a bit to take in. The other big aspect of retirement is then long-term care. So today in our financial planning strategy meetings, we're having those long-term care conversations. And honestly, the long-term care space today, when it comes to insurance and different products that have become way more attractive and simpler and easier to understand compared to, say, 10 years ago. I think long-term care today is insurance is way more attainable than it ever has been before. And so there's some pretty unique things that are happening in that space. So I think that conversation is always worth having with your advisor of, hey, do I need healthcare or long-term care insurance? How can I afford it? Can I afford it at all? Can we afford to self-insure? Those are things that you should be walking through with your advisor before retirement. And then anything around, potential decisions around, do we want to age in place, or are we good with the nursing home transitioning into a continuous care retirement community? Things like that, I think, are always good to be thinking about, having top of mind as we do approach this concept of retirement and aging down the road with medical types of issues.
All right. Our last topic here is estate planning. I think that this is something that we like to review this regularly. I think every year we're at least going to go through beneficiaries with our clients just to make sure everything there is exactly the way they want. So there are things that you might think about, though. Some of our clients like to give gifts to their children and grandchildren now. They say, instead of just leaving it to them and us not be able to see them enjoy it, we kind of want to give them some of it now. And they have different goals in that aspect. And they say, we want to give them a little bit extra. Well, what do you want to give them? What's the best way to give them money? How is the best way to structure that? Those are great questions to have when you're talking with your advisor. Another one is to review, do you have the right people in place still that are going to be the fiduciaries if you were to pass away to handle your estate? So you might have named somebody a number of years ago, forgot about who you named, and maybe that person now is not doing well health-wise. And you think, well, that's not really the right person. And so I might need to tweak that. That is a very tweakable thing. We help our clients all the time. We have a resource to help them rewrite that document, and we are able to do that for our clients. It's built into our system, and so they don't have to worry about any extra cost to do that. So make sure you got that in mind. And then have I made sure that I've looked at everything the way I need to when it comes to my family? Do I have new grandchildren? Do I have somebody who now maybe needs a little bit more assistance than they did before? How do I think about that? We've got some clients that go, look, I've got a son that him and his wife are just off the charts financially. I got another child who is struggling. can we think through how we might be able to structure this to help the one that's struggling a little bit in that way? So just things to think through. I'm not trying to tell you how to do them, just trying to tell you things that we run into. And then finally, which we've hit on this a little bit, is charitable organizations. There are different vehicles that we talk to, different ways to do things. In particularly, if you're over 70 and a half, you really want to think about what's called a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD. And then there is another one that's really advantageous if I'm trying to get itemization on things, and I regularly give to an organization, is to set up a donor advised fund. I'm not going to go into any details on those. I'm throwing those terms out there so that if you're having the conversation, you go, tell me about this QCD thing, or tell me about this donor advised thing, because I don't have to be 70 and a half for the donor advised. I do have to be 70 and a half for the QCD. So this is kind of like a lot of goals, a lot of things we talked through today. We do have a checklist if you would like to get it. All you have to do is send an email over to us or contact our office. You can find all that information on the website, which is pomwealth.net. We are more than happy to send this out to you, just so you got it to think through as you're planning throughout the year. But we hope this has been helpful. We'll talk to you again next week. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Secure Your Retirement. If you would like to learn more, we have actually created an online course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video course helps you to think through all the different steps as you get ready to plan for and live throughout retirement. You can access this by going to our website, pomwealth.net. In addition, you can also subscribe below to our podcast called Secure Your Retirement.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.